there's really no ground rules here. I just want to start a conversation, man. Our community's in uproar. Doesn't matter. Sides don't matter to me, any of that stuff. We have to do what is best for the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, for our community. And man, I got to be honest, I don't have all the answers. I really don't. And so I'm looking to you guys for help. I'm looking for you guys to help me guide the conversation. I truly meant what I said on the phone when I called you guys. The questions here are just so we can kind of keep it here a little bit. If there's something else on your mind, something I'm missing, you guys have discretion to say whatever you want today. And I know I'm sitting here as your boss, right? As the sheriff, you guys are in uniform. I mean it, okay?
I was raised by my mom, single mom. So if I start getting a little bit emotional when I start talking about my mom or my kids, it's because, I'm really passionate about my family. So, but growing up, single mom, worked really hard. She worked all the time. So she wasn't there a lot. So I got a twin brother. So we was left alone a lot. So you got back in Carolina, you got the old generation people sitting on porches and stuff, and your mom is not there, so there are going to be some enforcement. Those individuals are the ones that's going to be doing it. So, but my interaction, and I wasn't a bad kid out running around. My mom did the best she could. So she did teach us right from wrong, and we had people in the community that watched over us and made sure that we wasn't out doing bad. But we did have some people that I hung out with that was bad, that did some bad things, and complete, police interaction and stuff. They would come in the neighborhood, and back in Carolina, they come in the neighborhood and you're addressed by a police officer. It wasn't nice, wasn't nice. It could have been the very minimal, small stuff, and it wasn't nice. Whether you was the person they was looking for or not, the interaction was never good. It was bad. So I had to grow up in that environment. So it was always constant when we was out and about, and you see the police. Hey, let's go back this way, or let's go that way. Not even doing anything wrong. You just go the opposite direction. So I think raising your kids, because I raised my kids, and you teach them right from wrong, but you try to instill and show them something, talk about some of this stuff, because you're gonna, awareness, communicating with the youngsters and young people that are growing up. It's gonna be really, really important as we move forward. Even after this pandemic stuff is over with, the conversation that we're having now, there has to be some follow-up. We have to continue the mission, because it's not gonna be over with. But getting back to, me growing up, the police interaction wasn't good, so I went to school, and of course I was going to be, in law enforcement, criminal justice spaces, what I went to school for. I was like, all the bad stuff that I saw, I want to take and be a part of that. Maybe I can do something different. That was my thought pattern. So went to school, and then ended up coming into the Navy, which brought me out here. And then when I got out here, it was totally different from of course, the South North Carolina to here. The culture is very different. So I get out here, and back home, being called an N-word, a boy, that was normal. That was normal. I get out here, and it was like someone say something like that. It was like, oh no, you can't do that. That's unacceptable. You can't do that out here. I got out here, joined the military, and the military was the best thing that could have happened to me. The best thing that could have happened to me when I joined the military, and serving along the men and women in the military. You want to talk about brothers and sisters, and didn't make a difference what race you were. We was all family. We was all together. If we knew that if stuff hit the fan, or we out the war, or we're in some bad areas, we knew that the person next to me is all I got. So we knew that, and everybody held strong and held tight. So I joined the military. That was really, really good. Obviously, if there was racism and stuff that was going on with individuals, I wouldn't have known. I just wouldn't have known. It just didn't feel that way. So I did my tour in the military out here, ended up going over to the Correction Bureau. So this is where it kind of goes a little rocky, because back in that era when I started there, we maybe had a handful of minorities there. I was one of them. So things were not well at the beginning, and there was some people that, there was individuals that needed to be addressed and things that needed to be addressed. I think the biggest thing that I took away from it was when you have issues or racism exists or is happening to you or around you, where do you go? Is there someone that you can go talk to about this? Hey, this is what happened. When I started over at the Correction Bureau, absolutely not. There was nowhere to go. I went to one place and you say, hey, this is what, yeah, that's him. That's just the way he is. Don't worry about it. You just leave him alone. He won't mess with you. Just carry on. So coming from the military to that, it was really, really discouraging because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be here then. I don't know if I'm going to stay here. If this is the way we treat or we take care of the business this way, so I hung in there. Eventually, things began to change, and lo and behold, we're in the best situation, the best leadership, the best leaders. And I'm not saying that because I'm one of them, but we're in such a. I mean, from where I came from to now, and I'm not just saying my position of authority, but it's what we're doing and whatever, and everyone. But I'm not going to say that racism doesn't exist. I think we have to figure out a way to give someone an outlet if it is, or if they're around it, that we can identify it and then address it. Because if we don't identify it and address it, then it's going to exist and it's going to linger and it's going to be there. But if people are comfortable to be able to say, hey, man, that's not right. That should have been said that way. That should have been done. Where do I go and how do we address this? Because I think what's happening is we're turning the cheek and we're just letting it go, and it's never addressed. But it needs to be addressed. It needs to be identified. And I think, just like we have sexual harassment training, and there may need to be some, annually or something where we're continuing to talk about this so that people just don't forget, hey, we know it exists and it's not going to go away, but how can we do to fix things? So I'm in a really, really good place. I mean, what we're doing, the Bureau, the Sheriff's Office, this time and age, we just got wonderful leaders. I mean, we got wonderful leaders, wonderful employees and people, and getting to know people, getting to know your people, and it's going to be the same thing out in the community. We have to have community relations. We need to be able to get out and get to know people, and that's the reason why recruiting in your community. I don't know how much that's done, but you get to know people. Like in our little community over at the jail, we're able to build a lot of rapport. Even though we have some bad people, we got some good people. They got arrested, but they made bad decisions. I don't mean they're bad people, they just made bad decisions. We, as the Bureau, we have a report, we build a report so we know these individuals, and I think that changes a lot of things. So when they come in and they got a bad attitude because of how they got, whatever happens when they got arrested or whatever the situation is, they come see one of us, oh, hey, things change, completely demeanor and behavior changes because, they know who we are. So I think just, being out in the community, having these conversations and don't let stuff die. We have to just keep the foot on the gas and keep pushing this, because eventually we'll be able to, eventually the goal is to, if we got bad people that are out there policing and doing stuff that, it needs to be addressed.
Yeah. My legal name is Luis Martin Zelaya. Early on I realized that was something to just go and say, hey, my name's Marty or Martin. If I said Martin, especially at school dances, it turned into Marlin. But I'm probably the oldest person in the room here right now. Started my law enforcement career just before the Rodney King incident and the riot started. And as I start getting toward the end of my career, unfortunately, we have George Floyd and that incident. My experience with discrimination, with racism, really started before I even knew it. I am middle child, older brother, younger sister, and our experience started with my brother. He was born in Mexico, and when they came up here, he got him into education. He's very intelligent, but he didn't speak English, and they didn't have English as a second language courses over there. So they were actually labeling him as retarded. That was an acceptable term back then. It affected his education so much so that when my parents had me, they started teaching me nothing but English. They are bilingual. I am not. I speak Spanglish. And that's just stuff I picked up over the years because my parents didn't want my sister and I to have the same problems that my brother did.
You know, I grew up in California, I'm not gonna lie. It took a long time, and when getting pulled over, I wouldn't be shaky. You know, because it was never pleasant. Nobody ever had anything nice to say to me if they're pulling me over. They weren't pulling me over to tell me have a nice day. You know, they weren't wiping snow off my car. I was like, man, what'd I do? This is unfortunate. We gotta get away from this is unfortunate. The community needs to feel safe. I know, you know, community policing, you know, you've got this side, this side, this side. There's somewhere in the middle, balance. I think balance is key. Our youth is our key. That's our future. Our nation is fractured right now, and the future leaders are growing up, and we need to mend that fear, and we need to flip the narrative. So
Yeah, this topic.
That's fine.
What made me to go into law enforcement is I actually did not like cops growing up because in Tacoma, we were grown up kind of hating cops, and I don't know why. It was just in our culture where we're at. It's not like fully black culture. It was just they're gonna stop us for this reason, X and X. Just keep walking, kind of deal. Don't talk with them. But I remember when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I was walking home from school. There was a scuffle across the street, and so I tried to get away from it because my mom said, "Hey, don't get involved in anything like that." I got away, was walking. I actually got stopped by a cop. Kind of shook me down. I was like, "You need to stay off the streets. You're gonna end up just like everyone else here. Keep walking." I was like, "Well, I didn't do anything." So I walked home. I was kind of mad, upset. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody. I was just like, whatever, F cops. So when I went to college, I still kind of had that mindset, but at the same time, I knew better than to lump everyone together, just because you can't lump people together. So I remember meeting a few of the Cheney PD guys, Spokane County. They treated me with the utmost respect. It kind of changed my mindset as cops aren't all bad. It's people that are bad. It's not us in the uniform. It's not us. If you're bred to be bad, you're just going to be bad. So it kind of helped me realize that this is something I want to do, why I got into law enforcement, why I wanted to kind of change that perspective of how people see us. And being a person of color, it kind of helped out. I can branch out and talk to people of color like, hey, stop this, okay? That's not all of us. You got to take responsibility for what you're doing as well. It's not cops hate you. You did something bad. We're stopping you for a reason, okay? Stop getting up in arms. I don't know. When we stop people, it's for a reason. At least in Snohomish County, what I've seen from everybody, police officers, troopers, it's for a reason. We're not stopping.
Malcolm, you mentioned something about first interactions with cops, and that struck me because you kind of putting pieces together as we're going to have this conversation. Some of the stuff that you look, how do you affect change? How do you personally do that in whether it's a professional or private role? I've been coaching youth sports for years and been passionate about it. Been able to watch my kids grow up through youth sports and be a part of their lives that way. And I purposefully would go out and coach once in a while in uniform because it was apparent that some of the families there didn't always have the best interactions with police, whether it was locally or historically around the country. And I thought, well, if their son or daughter is going to have interaction with a cop, wouldn't it be better if it's someone they know, they trust, that's already kind of in that circle of influence with them? And thankfully, the organization I was coaching with, they supported it. Said, yeah, come out in uniform. And it started some good conversations with some families about why is Coach here in uniform? Well, how does it make you feel? I'm not comfortable with Coach being here in uniform. This is the perfect conversation to have then. So it was really cool because we got to have that first experience with a man in uniform in a really safe environment. And the funny part was where I'd show up in uniform and a kid that hadn't been there year before, the last time I was in uniform, they look at me and go, wait a second, you're a cop? Yeah, Coach is a cop, and I am. And that's just what I do. You know who I am. You know me. And so in the last couple of weeks, I've really been hoping that the young men and women that I've coached through the years, as they see the news and they see what's happening in our country, they remember that I'm Coach, I'm Dad, I'm the neighbor, I'm I'm not a uniform. I'm not just some robot as some bigger group. And that what rests in the hearts of each of us is good. And we stand against evil, and we stand against the bad things that are out there. And that when bad things happen in our industry, just like any industry, we call it out. I think Mike, you did a great job calling it out the other day and saying that this is something we all stand against. And
I saw on that video is just, it's reprehensible. I've been involved in a lot of uses of force throughout my couple decades of service here. I've heard different reports. It was 6 minutes, it was 9 minutes, it doesn't matter. The point is, it was several minutes. And at that moment in time, after a use of force, with him being on the ground, that is an eternity. And for crying out loud, get the guy up off the ground. It's over. We should be over with the use of force. So it's, I mean, there's no other way to say it. I think it's all been said, but I think we do need to talk about it here today too. And we have to learn from it. We have to. It's time. I think it's already been said here too. Better than I can. But this can't be a one-time deal. This can't be a one-time conversation. There's a lot of healing that needs to go on in our community, and that has to start here.
Unbelievable. The fact that you have individuals that we all been taught, you know, you're in the use of force, you impede, and then once you gain some sort of control, you restrain. Once the restraining part goes into fact, and you know, you de-escalate, you start to slow things down. Assess, yeah, if you need aid there, whatever you need to the scene, then you can start making those things happen. Once that person is restrained, and then have officers on this individual, and we got somebody standing, and then we got the officer with the knee on the neck. Let me just tell you, if the person that has control over this person with his knee on his neck, he knows what type of pressure, his body weight, he knows how much pressure he's applying to this guy's neck. This person is saying, hey, I can't breathe, and like the video, you can see that he was trying to get himself in a position that he could, but wasn't unable, you know, once you pass out, and then the rest is history. But the fact that these things were happening, and you know, no one intervened, and as an agency, to see that no one out of that group intervened, and you got the public just trying to do it. And I get why the public didn't do anything, because that could have escalated to something else too. Right. So I understand it, but the fact that all of this happened and no one intervened, you know, from a training aspect. I mean, I don't think you can train anyone to not help or to stop.
You know, people's perception is their reality, and you have to listen to that, and you have to adjust to that. We have to train to that. It's a different generation now, and if we continue, like I said before, fear-based. I think a lot of racism and people's perception comes from fear, and we have to address that. And I think there's power in humanity. And I think the biggest, I mean, we have to train force. That's what we do, right? People get squirrely, we have to address that. But we have to have kit and gloves on. And at some point, a humanitarian is a factor. The man saying he can't breathe, I think he says one neck hurts.
We have to continue to update training, because as medicine progresses, we're going to likely see that we're going to have to alternate our techniques and trainings to address those new issues and continue to do that.
It's unfortunate, but we gotta continue these conversations. And to me, I think it starts, we as the minority group, we can say all we want to, but I honestly think that it comes from our white counterparts to recognize it and say, hey, you know, you're in the wrong. Yeah. You know, we only can say so much, and that can fall on deaf ears. But as our white coworkers and so on and so forth, they need to do their job. They need to get out of their comfort zone. They need to pay attention. They need to say, you know what you did was wrong. And I may not be a person of that race, religion, color, creed, but what you did was wrong, period. And I think once we get some recognition or that starts to happen, then we might see a turn. We might see that shift. We might start moving forward.